Welcome to Manager Tools. Zero-based reporting. This cast answers these questions. What is zero-based reporting? Why should I use zero-based reporting? How do I implement zero-based reporting? Well, if you want answers to these questions and more, keep listening. Here we go.
Folks, our January Effective Manager Conference, virtual Effective Manager Conference, as you might imagine in this pandemic world we're living in, was sold out. And so late in December, we set up another one on 27 January. So starting 27 January, there will be a new virtual EMC. You can sign up now on our website. For those of you who don't know, the virtual sessions cover the same stuff that the in-person sessions do, and they're cheaper. And this one will be starting on 27 January, which is a Wednesday. We'll do it Wednesday, Friday. So you'll have everything you need in a total of only like 7 business days, I think. We're trying to compress them a little bit because we're getting so much demand. And if demand continues, of course, we'll continue to add more. So do come to the website, Public Effective Manager Conference, virtual. I think actually I'm presenting this one as well. So I hope to see you on the 27th of January.
I think we found over many, many years that bureaucracy in organizations doesn't happen only in larger organizations.
Oh, you think?
Yeah.
We have it here. We have 11 people here. We have bureaucracy,
yeah.
Right?
Well, we did when it was only me and you. We had 2 people.
Exactly.
We had bureaucracy.
Yeah.
I probably created it since I'm a high C, but whatever.
Yeah. And look, one of the hidden things in organizations that is sort of a grinding frustration for a lot of people is the amount of times they spend reporting. And reports are one part of bureaucracy. The rest of the organization needs to know what you do. And we're behind the idea that you don't get to just do your work. You also have to communicate about your work. But sometimes, actually all the time in all organizations, reports pile up. And one way to address that is something called zero-based reporting. And it's so easy to do. This is a great thing for individual managers to do. It's even better if you're a director or a senior director or a VP. You can free up all kinds of human capacity by simply stripping away the reports that people aren't reading anyway.
Yeah, I've never found that.
Well, I've got that. Believe me, in the show notes, most people don't realize this is our first recording of the new year, 2021.
It is.
The year after the year that is not to be named.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the calendars went from 2019 to
2021. It's magic. 2 odd numbers in a row.
I wish.
Yeah. Okay, so what's our outline? Real simple. We're going to define what zero-based reporting is for you. We're going to tell you the 3 steps you need to do to follow it, which is number 1, eliminate all local reports. Ask your boss to review reports that leave you and go to him or her. And then repeat this probably annually, in addition to also setting end dates for reports. Sometimes they're called sunset dates, so that reports don't just live on in infamy and then people don't even know why they're doing them. Simple stuff.
Cool. So let's start with the beginning. What is zero-based reporting?
Yeah. So ZBR, I'm going to call it ZBR because otherwise you and I are going to trip over that all day long. ZBR is basically a waste and efficiency concept that mandates now, guys, that all reports, the reporting that you do, that you send to, that your people send to you and that your people and you send on elsewhere in the organization, all reports are canceled after a typical time period. Typically, it's 1 year. It's actually the baby brother of a much more powerful, but also much more difficult concept to implement, a much more widely known process called zero-based budgeting, ZBB. And basically, in zero-based budgeting, everybody's budget gets zeroed out at regular intervals, like annually. You don't start with your old budget. You start with 0, and you have to bill it again. And it's a way to eliminate things that you don't want to cut out, but are a year after you started with that number, the value of that number is so much lower that it's not worth continuing. And it basically forces every manager to re-justify all of their spending, not just their incremental increase, but all of their spending. And look, priorities are constantly changing. but budgets tend to change less frequently. Now, this last year, she who will not be named, obviously, I suspect a lot of places budget just went out the window, and senior people took over and said no, 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 said don't spend anything, and so the idea that a budget means a manager has the ability to spend that money, it's been allocated to her, for instance, last year probably stopped being true for many organizations, not all, but for many organizations.
4 hours, definitely.
Yeah. 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 We cut expenses to the bone, everything but people. So basically, your priorities are always changing, but your budgets don't change. Typically, budgets last for a year, right? And so ZBB attempts to control those costs by highlighting budget items that are obsolete, right? Hey, look, you can't put that back in, right? We knew it was in your budget last year, but it doesn't have justification this year. So you don't just get to leave it in there and have us only worry about where you're asking for more. We're going to look at everything. And why does ZBB exist? Because look, everybody's a little bit selfish. Managers are not good at giving up budget. And so ZBB takes their budgets out of their hands on a regular basis, typically, again, annually, because that's when budgets tend to be run. Your organization may be different in that regard. Well, zero-based reporting, ZBR, is similar, but it's a whole lot easier because budgets are much more complex and they typically require higher levels of authority and approval. You almost couldn't do ZBB. Now that I think about it, that's not true. You could do ZBB on your managerial level. You just zero everything out. The problem, of course, is that other people will not be doing it. And you'll have to be very good at what you do if you're going to cut your budget to zero and start over and build it back up again with your team before you submit it to your boss, because your boss may raise an eyebrow when she sees that your budget is for 20% less, because everybody's budget always grows. Typically, budgeting happens at a division or a company level, and so that's something a single manager can't do. And oftentimes, managers are just like a cork in a stream when it comes to budgeting. The company has a budgeting process, and you assume there are some things happening up above you with Excel spreadsheets or Oracle or SAP, and then gradually the stuff rolls down here and it comes to you and they say, okay, fill out this form. And that's your budget. So when you have that going on, it's harder for you as a single manager to do. But ZBR, zero-based reporting, is available to almost anybody. Now, look, I'm not saying you're going to be able to get rid of all your reports. You won't, okay? Some of them are necessary from you or your people to higher level folks. Okay. And when I say necessary, I mean the organization relies on them and senior people actually read them or look at them or consult them, whether they're electronic or paper. And look, guys, that's one of the burdens of lower level and particularly frontline managers, that senior folks need aggregated data that in order for them to make decisions about how the business is doing and where they need to address themselves. And that inevitably requires information from frontline folks. You know, Mike, I got to tell you just as an aside, when we were in the Army, one of the phrases that became popular, I take that back. I'm pretty sure it became popular when we were in the Army, but it may have started before then. Please, somebody don't write me that you read about this phrase I'm about to give you in World War II, unless the article you're talking about was written in World War II or shortly thereafter. There have been plenty of stories in the 70s, 80s, 90s today that refer to this phrase retroactively, right? Applying a modern concept to a previous situation. But generally, I think the concept of what is known as tooth to tail is a way of thinking about budgeting. How many soldiers do you have that are fighting, as opposed to how many soldiers do you have that are cooking or doing healthcare or doing logistics or operations or support or communications or something else? And the world's defense forces historically have seesawed back and forth that during time of peace, the tail gets pretty fat and the teeth get pretty long, and maybe not as many of them. And the same thing here, that you're on the front lines, you're the teeth of the organization, but you also have to feed the tail. But look, the way ZBR works is we're going to try very hard to reduce to near zero all of the work we and our teams, your team, you and your team do in creating reports that aren't useful. And this goes back to, look, again, frontline managers have to do the work, but we don't necessarily get the benefit from those reports. And for us on the front lines, those costs can be hard to swallow when you're thinking, I really need more people. And your boss is saying, no, you can't have any. Well, as we've said before, the solution first is not more people. The solution is elimination of waste. And some of that waste is work that's being done that is not on your top 3 or 4 or 5 priorities. And another one is the administrivia that goes into organizations that ends up being what's known as bureaucracy. Most people don't even know that bureaucracy comes from the French, from Versailles, where almost every, that's the most famous example of it. Almost every castle, almost every king's residence, castle or whatever you want to call it, wherever it is in the world, had entire wings of nothing but little nooks and crannies where the bureaucrats, and they were called bureaucrats because in French, bureau is desk, were stuffed into little teeny corners. Of course, there were the places where the king and the queen and the royals met, and the hoi polloi were having their parties and so on. But there were parts of the castle that were running the nation or the republic or whatever it was, or the state, and they were almost hovels stuffed into the back and in the places that none of the famous people went. And that's where bureaucracy comes from. In fact, some of those people, just the fact that they had a roof over their head, some of the people that worked for the king in the bureaucracy slept there because they had a roof over their head and heat. Things have gotten a little better. So next time somebody complains about bureaucracy, tell them, hey, at least you've got a roof over your head and you got some heat. So look, the goal is to reduce to zero or near zero the work that we do in creating these reports. And the way to do that is to just embargo, to just stop all the reports you do on a regular basis, and then decide justification for what gets to continue. Now look, I know you're thinking, oh gosh, I can't do that. I promise you, it's not as bad as you think. Now look, one of the intended but not obvious benefits of ZBR is that even when we don't have authority to end a report that our people are creating or providing information to, there's a difference between it being created automatically and the recipient having to justify it all over again. You'll probably be surprised by some more senior person saying, when you as a manager have to go do this, yeah, I probably do like that report, but dude, I can get by without it in return for the benefit of more productivity from you and your folks. And the only way that happens, they're not going to do it now. Some senior guy is not going to reach down and say, please stop sending me these 17 reports. I mean, that thought passes their head, and then they have to get back to email. And so they don't do it. So you have to ask for justification, and some of them will give it. Say, no, dude, I got to have that one. Okay, that's fine. I'm happy to continue doing them, but I'm validating that they're worth doing. So that's the theory. Okay. Now, how do you actually do it? So the first thing you do, you don't do a review. Okay. You don't start by reviewing everything. This is not some long drawn out process. It may take a little while to get through everything, but this is not about a study. We're not going to study.
You're getting things. To the core of what zero-based means, right?
Yeah. We eliminate. Exactly. That's right. Eliminate. That would be zero. I eliminated. We're down to 5. Well, no. No, eliminate really is a very specific thing. I terminated him, but he's still alive. Yeah. Okay. So ZBR is really straightforward for reports that you and your team create and use for yourselves. Again, you don't do a review and consider whether to streamline something. You simply kill them all. And then you consider rejustification. And I'll give you a good pop culture analogy of this. It's similar to what you may have seen on television with how therapists and family members deal with someone who is struggling with a personality disorder. It's very rare, but it does happen, called hoarding. Okay. If you've seen it on TV, I honestly, guys, I only know this from TV and then doing 20 minutes worth of research on the web about it. So I didn't even know that there was a problem with this, but for some people there are, and our minds are complex places, and sometimes the chemicals get out of balance, and you have folks who just refuse to let go of things. But the solution in hoarding, and if you've seen it on TV, you know it, is rather than haggling over each item that's in the house, and really the situations they show on TV are pretty bad with unsafe and unsanitary conditions because of this disorder. And so haggling about each one of those things with a hoarder is futile because of how they think and feel about them. The solution that therapists have figured out is to take everything out of somebody's space, their living space, and then have them justify bringing certain items back in. And of course, in between, just to go a step further, they also clean the house, which is good for health purposes, obviously. So that's the mentality we're going to have. We're going to take everything out. All reports are dead. And then we'll decide what we continue to do. The first step in doing this is letting your team know what you're planning. This shouldn't be hard. Announce in your next staff meeting, because you are doing staff meetings, right? That you're going to do ZBR. And for them to consider all the reports that they create and that they read before your next staff meeting. If you're a licensee, lucky you can send out these show notes to your team and say, read this, follow the instructions, and then come back to our next staff meeting. I'll put some time on the staff meeting and we'll start taking a crack at some of this stuff. And it will be really helpful if you set the example by when people say, yeah, I'm not sure this is really good. These are all the reports I do. And you send back, yeah, we can get rid of those 5. I don't know. If my boss did that to me, I'd be like, okay, that's great.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, look, let me also say something else. I mentioned staff meeting. I know a lot of folks don't think a staff meeting is necessary. They're wrong. It's not a question of personal preference, guys. You got to have a staff meeting. But look, please, for many of you who don't do staff meetings, say, I'll just send out an email. You know what? That's dumb. Okay. Avoid just sending out an email. I've seen it done. I've watched it tried. It doesn't work. Email is such a lame communications medium for initiating new efforts or projects. It just is. You need verbal. You need face-to-face. You need a bit of persuasion. I know your people don't like persuasion, but you get to use it as a manager periodically. What will happen? You send out an email, you'll get a bunch of email traffic. And some of those people will forget to copy all. And so you'll have to answer the same question multiple times. And some are just going to send you their list and expect to be done with it. I don't want to deal with this. This is just another report, right? And that will mean they don't think about it any further. And that will mean that they won't be thinking about keeping reporting in check going forward. And look, either they're a part of your team or they're not. You ask them to review all the reports. It shouldn't take them more than 45 minutes. And it may be they don't catch all of them in 2 or 3 weeks. I'll say, I completely forgot. Bi-weekly, I have to send this out. So, okay, it's on the block. We stop it. Now, let's decide whether or not we're going to let it back in. We'll meet on our staff meeting day after tomorrow, and we'll decide whether or not we're going to let that one back in. Now, I've been told over the years that at this point in a cast, what people really want me to do is tell them what to say. I think this is the most unusual part of my job, but I must tell you, those of you, my faithful listeners, that it is really good to hear that's something that you need, that's helpful to you, because I'm happy to do it. And I've written some of these things for clients in the field before. And so I'm happy to share it with you because why reinvent the wheel? So here's how it might sound in front of your staff meeting one week. Again, no email has gone out before. Hey folks, I want us to see if we can't get rid of some of the admin work we're always doing and complaining about around here. So we're going to take a crack at zero-based reporting, ZBR. In fact, we'll call this project ZBR. What that means is we're going to get rid of, and I mean it, get rid of all of the reporting that we do, all of it. And then we're going to decide which reports we really do need or that we really don't have the authority to get rid of, and allow those to continue to be created. Or maybe when we look at them, we realize, it's been 2 years since we've been doing this report. Perhaps we can modify it. Perhaps we could even automate it. Perhaps now the system that we just put in, the Oracle, the SAP, the PeopleSoft, whatever, there's an equivalent that somebody can get automatically, save us a bunch of time. Now, look, guys, some of the reports we don't control, and my boss or her boss will insist we continue with some of those. But that's my job, okay? My job is once we identify our reports and then decide we're going to kill them all, and then we decide which stays or goes, if there's a report that we agree is outside of our purview, it's my job to take the recommendation to kill it to my boss. And that's what I'll do. You have my word. I will go to my boss. I will take a recommendation to kill it. I will say, actually, it's already killed, and I want you, boss, to re-justify it. Okay? So, guys, come to our next staff meeting. Again, I'll put 30 minutes on the staff meeting calendar, and I'll take less time for my part so you guys can still have your parts with your list of reports that you either create or you contribute to. Do me a favor and do think about how much time it takes you. And don't just say a minute or two. Think about it. Is it 5 minutes? Is it starting the report and then going back and checking it, double checking to make sure that that when you did the run on the system that there are no errors, or you put in the right dates, and then you got to send an email. Maybe it's 5 or 10 minutes. 5 or 10 minutes over the course of the year is a few hours. Be ready to kill them as you're thinking about it. You're going to have to defend keeping them. Actually, no, you're not going to have to defend keeping them. You're definitely not going to have to fight, get rid of them. They're rid. They're already rid. You're going to have to justify why we should continue doing it. What questions do you guys have? Right? And again, staff meeting, why is it beautiful? As opposed to one-on-ones, as opposed to emails, as opposed to Slack, is because now everybody gets to see everybody else's questions. And you might say, wait, Slack, everybody gets it. Everybody on my team gets my Slack messages. Yes. And now you're typing answers. And if all you're doing is typing, if you think your job as a manager is to type in Slack and text messages and email, you've missed the boat entirely.
Yeah. I wonder if anybody's out there thinking that there's probably not much to kill. Like, it's all necessary. I can't kill much of it.
Yeah. I think that's possibly true. There might not be. But look, your team is going to be impressed that you're trying to find efficiencies for them. I'm trying to free up your time. And by the way, I'm not sitting here with a boatload of work I'm going to shove down your throat after you get rid of all this stuff. I'm not doing that. I mean, there's always more work to do, right? We want to be in a place where there's more work to do than there is people.
There's not a hidden agenda here. Okay, good to know.
No. Do I want my people to spend more time on their number one priority? Yes. I do. And if they spend more time on that and there's nothing else new, good to go. And look, it may even be in your cursory review before you start, you can see that some reports only come to you. And maybe you ought to ask yourself, do I really need this? Could I get by without it? Maybe when I want that data, I could just ping and ask for it. And then they don't have to prepare the report every week. Because I got to tell you, Mike, I'll tell you one of the reasons I finally decided to put this cast out. I've had it sitting in my queue for probably 5 years. I got sick of people telling me about email, about how, oh God, I got an email. And I just got all this email. Oh my God, email. It's terrible. And I'm like, okay. And so I finally, my bad. I responded emotionally and sort of like, whatever, dude. Email's real. It's like asphalt or glass or sky. It's there. You're going to have to deal with it. But I finally realized rather than just judging, I'd say, okay, wait a minute. What about email? Show me your email. I had people send me pictures of their inbox. And I got to tell you, there were an awful lot of people that were complaining about having 150 emails when 35 or 40 of them were personal, and they were subscriptions to retail outlets and restaurants and
my Lord. Okay.
Amazon and companies that they had bought stuff from and upgrade offers and so on. Anyway, but what ends up happening is if you're smart, and I know you guys are, what happens is you got 100 emails you got to get through, whether you're doing it our way and crushing it, or whether you're spreading out across the entire day in a lifetime of misery. The first thing you do when you're looking at mail is you're looking for things you have to do, priorities, stuff from your boss and so on. And then there's another level of stuff after that that's operational that you have to get to, but you're going to put certain things above other things. And then there's that sort of, I call it cruft. Mike probably wouldn't call it cruft. I think of cruft as being just crap at the side of a website that really doesn't help and isn't visually appealing and so on. I know it's more software than it is visual, but regardless, I think of it as
I
cruft.
just call it crap. That's what I
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, so there's some cruft at the bottom, right? And I discovered from talking to people that cruft includes reports, and they look at it and say, I don't have to do that right now. But they don't necessarily mark it as unread, or even if they do, I notice a lot of people have thousands of unread emails. And why bother? Well, why bother marking something as unread? Like, oh, I don't have any time for that right now, but I get to it. And then I look at my email inbox and I got 3,000 unread emails. I mean, you might as well just walk around, and every time you take a couple of steps, somebody should kick you in the butt. Just boom, just boom. So you carry this around all the time. Or better yet, here, carry a bowling ball around all day. Just think about it. No, actually, don't think about the bowling ball. Just carry it around. Just be miserable with the bowling ball all day. Because I know people are thinking about their unread emails, and they know they're supposed to get to them, but they're the ones that marked them unread. So the questions you ought to ask are things like, don't just ask yourself, did you need it? Ask yourself, in light of where we are today, is it really worth the level of effort that's required for my people to put it together? And then the question becomes, do you even really know what the level of effort is anymore to create that report? It's hard to judge the value of a report to you if you don't know how much time your team takes to create it. This is why we don't have a discussion about each one. We take them all off the table, and then we have a justification for what comes back in. That's how you do it. And by the way, you'll get a couple of people on your team that you might think are cantankerous at times, but they'll be totally motivated about this. They'll roll their eyes at first, and then they realize, wait a minute, I can drive a truck through that loophole. I'm going to give him all 28 of the reports that I contribute to. Good on you, mate. I like that. I want more stuff at the table that we can go through. Folks, I have to tell you, we've been getting a lot of calls from clients. We're quite busy from client business in the first quarter here of 2021. And the reason why is, as we have been saying for the last 9 months, the distance that managers are having to manage from because of COVID pandemic, government lockdown situations, has exposed the difficulty it is to manage people, and distance only makes it harder. If you know anything about the Allen curve, and if you don't know what it is, you can look it up on Wikipedia. Distance matters in terms of communication, and therefore in terms of trust, and therefore in terms of results. So if you're a manager and you want your fellow managers or your company to consider a client effective remote manager session, we're doing those, and we're quite busy doing those. And it's a short session. It's only few hours and all in one day. And it's designed to address how to be an effective remote manager. It is structured around one-on-ones, feedback, coaching, and delegation, but we give you some other guidance as well to deal with your distance from others because of the pandemic. I hope somebody will reach out. Place to do so is on the website, or you can email Maggie at manager-tools.com, who handles all of our client business.
Okay, let's talk about the part that some people may be worried about, which is reports and bosses not necessarily liking the idea that you're killing reports.
Yeah, the problem, as I mentioned before, the tooth to tail thing. If you're at the tooth, if you're the frontline manager, it's different in different places, but I would bet that you're in the minority. The reports that are created for you are the minority of the work that your people do on creating reports, because they do reports for the entire organization. Okay. So what you got to do is ask your boss about reviewing reports that go to her or him. You're probably going to have more opportunity to kill stuff in this situation using ZBR if you're a director versus just a plain frontline manager. And if you don't know, just to be clear, organizational speak, a director is somebody who manages other managers. There are a lot of Silicon Valley directors who are frontline managers, and they love the fact that they're called a director. But guys, everybody knows better. You're a frontline manager, and there's nothing wrong with being a frontline manager. Okay. There will be some reports that your directs, who are managers, are creating for you. And by the way, think about it. Even if you're a manager or you're a director, the majority of the time you say, hey, listen, I need a report on X. And somebody go, okay, I'll do that. And it took you, the entire exchange took 5 seconds. And now you've contributed to the administrative cruft in your organization, the waste at the bottom of the ocean, and maybe, I would call it whale poop, but we've learned recently that whale poop floats. But that stuff that adds to the diminishment of time that your people have to work on their stuff, on their priorities. For those reports that if you're a director or if you're a frontline manager, for that stuff that your directs create for you, whether your directs are managers and they're getting stuff from their people, think long and hard about whether you really do need them. And I'm going to tell you something. If I'm your VP and you tell a manager, you're a director, you report to me, and you tell a manager, no, I need those reports, and then I'm looking over your shoulder one day and I see a bunch of unread reports from 3 weeks ago in your inbox, you are done. I'm skipping around you. I'm going to your direct, the manager. I'm saying, stop sending him that report. No more. We're not doing this. Managerial authority is not an excuse to waste other people's time. Now, an aside, I had this conversation with a couple of guys in Silicon Valley, and a couple of individual contributors were sitting around the table with me when I suggested this. This is how virtually everything my manager asked me to do is a waste of time. There are people like that. They think, I only want to do what I want to do. Well, those people are idiots, okay? And they're, in my opinion, they're early candidates for one of the two reasons to fire somebody, because they don't do their work or they tear down the team. And part of tearing down the team is an unwillingness to do the organizational stuff that's necessary, that you don't just get to do your work. You also have to communicate about your work. You also have to collaborate with others, whether you like people or not. It doesn't matter. As the saying goes, when the kid tells the HR guy in the interview, I really want a job that works, working with people. The naive young person says that in an interview, and the crusty HR person says, well, that's good because all the jobs with dogs and trees in our company are taken. You're going to have to work with people, and the fact that you don't like it, tough. Okay. You need to recognize that some of your time is going to be spent on maybe things that unrelated purely to your priorities. So be aware of that. And there are some people who will send you a list of all the reports just because. I don't think I should ever have had to do these. That's just a crappy attitude, and you can give them feedback about that. Not about the attitude, but about what they said. So again, I mentioned this before, perhaps the solution is on a regular report that you ask for a spot report rather than, quote, making it easier on people by standardizing a report by making it periodic, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever. Generally, other than financials, I can't think of very many reports that are monthly that get people super excited. I could be wrong. I'm sure somebody will send me an example and I'll be happy to see it and talk to you about it. But regardless, whether you're a director or a manager, there are going to be reports that you don't control that are created for those above you or outside of your org. If you can't use what I call the quiet assassin concept, which we're going to cover next, go to your boss and explain what you're doing. Tell him, I'm doing ZBR. Okay. Tell him you want to stop producing the report. This is probably where you'll need that level of effort data from your team, because your boss is going to ask, well, I need it, but how long does it take? If you say 2 minutes, you can say, you should keep doing it.
Or worse yet, you have no answer.
Yeah.
It's not going to go well.
Yeah. And you could bluff maybe and say it's not insignificant. But if it were me and you were bluffing me, I'd go, let's find out what the significance is. Let's have a number. Why don't we? Ask whether he can tolerate not having the report. Suggest it become a spot report when he needs it. And tell him what your response time will be, your service level effort will be, or service level expectations, what his SLE should be. Okay. If he can't tolerate it, or if she can't tolerate it stopping, maybe you could do it less often, or maybe in a format that's easier to produce, or maybe just a link to the data rather than one of your people collating the data, put it in all nice and pretty and sending it through you for your blessing before it goes to him or to her or to whomever. Say, look, how about I just send you a link and the data you want is right there. It's not on a single page. You have to scroll through 2 pages of web pages, but that's what bosses do.
I can do that.
Yeah. I did it all the time. Now, look, I mentioned the assassin's technique. In some situations, you can quietly eliminate a report that leaves your org, goes up to your boss or his boss or whatever, and not tell anyone.
What?
Yeah, I'm not saying this is not risk-free tools.
Okay.
This is not Candyland tools. This is manager tools, and there's risk.
Gutsy move, Maverick.
Yeah, exactly. Gutsiest move I ever saw. Great line. It's been our experience, because I've probably done ZBR in 30 or 40 organizations all across the world over the last 30 years. Assess your relationship with your boss and what kind of political capital you have. That whether or not folks that don't read your reports, and that typically would be through email, won't miss them. And I'll tell you something, this is particularly true for reports that go to other departments, other divisions outside of your vertical chain of command. It takes a lot more political capital for someone across the org to make your team continue creating a report. And it takes a mountain of political will on their part for them to get a report reinstated from the dead when they didn't even notice it was missing for 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, how important could it have been, right?
Yeah, you could claim innocence. Say, look, I'm sorry, you're right. We haven't done it for the last 3 to 4 weeks, and we got swamped, and I had to cut some things, and that's one of the things I cut, and I take full responsibility. In fact, tell your folks, if somebody comes to you and asks for that report, send it to me. Okay. Don't let your people hold the accountability for this. It's you're doing this. And that's what you're paid for, that extra level of accountability, which by definition includes risk. And say to them, look, we can add it back in, but look, no offense. You didn't miss it for 3 or 4 weeks. How about we send it to you monthly? Or maybe we could agree that there's a simpler way to do it, because my guys spend an hour on that every week. And that was 3 hours they saved. That there was the benefit was all in the savings. There was no benefit in you reading it because you didn't read it, because you didn't have it. Yeah. Now, if you want to hedge your bets on the stuff going to your boss and not ask because you and your boss are like 2 peas in a pod, you can zero out the report and then 3 to 4 weeks later, mention to your boss that he hasn't been getting that particular report and see whether or not he'll ask for it back. This is a little bit of a stretch of the I've zeroed it out. Now, boss, can you please justify it right away before you cancel the send? And look, unless he's a jerk, he's not going to ask for the missing ones. So at least you saved a few weeks worth of time for someone. But even if it comes back, okay, fine, it comes back. And for the next 2 or 3 or 4 staff meetings, you're going to have updates for everybody about what reports you were successful in killing at higher levels and which ones you weren't. And look, yes, of course, there are some reports even your boss can't stop, and don't hold that against her. You'll still have killed some of the ones you do control and a few others as well, probably. Now, last piece. You got to repeat this annually because cruft just happens. It's like it's yeast.
It's just a law.
It sits at the bottom and it bubbles up. And my friend Dana Gordon has been making sourdough bread. He brought me a loaf recently. Oh, it's so good. And apparently you have to do this thing called a starter. And you put this yeast in and you take some out and you put some more in and the yeast and water in it. And it grows every day. And you have to, it's more complicated than I can do.
Yeah.
But
Apparently Dana has a lot of time on his hands.
No, he does not actually. But he is, quite accomplished in the kitchen. And, let me tell you, if his bread is any indication, it's good. So look, you got to do this periodically because new reporting requirements will creep in. You will go back to the old thing. You won't even think about it. You go, hey, can you guys create a report on that, blah, blah, blah? People are like, yeah, no problem. We'll do it for you. And then you're part of the problem again. So do this same review. I hate to be a Proctor guy, but lather, rinse, repeat periodically. Annually is probably fine for most of us. Just put it as a recurring deliverable on your calendar or in your task management system. Hey guys, it's time to do zero-based reporting. And now that you've got a heightened sensitivity to the value of reporting relative to the level of effort, don't allow new reports that you genuinely feel you need to have indefinite time spans. Put a date stop on your new report. Say, look, let's do that one for 3 months, and then we'll kill it, and then we'll renegotiate that one. And I'll put a note on my calendar for 3 months from now to go, do I still need X? Report X. If you still need it, bring it back from the dead. But don't go back to having to justify killing it. Okay, that's the beauty of CBR. It gets killed automatically. In fact, it would be really cool if you forgot that quarterly review and one of your dudes just didn't send it because he knew it had an end date and he put that on his calendar. Oh, I love that guy. I want to kiss his feet. Like, dude, gold star. And ninja level manager guidance, have your number 2 lead this project. That way, when she becomes a number 1, she'll already know how to do it.
And you get all this for free.
There you go.
How awesome is that?
Yeah. So that's it, guys. It's not rocket science. It's a fairly short cast for us, but let me summarize. Bureaucracy, and that definitely includes reporting, creeps in on little cat's feet. You have to have this one. You agree to have that one. You're told you must do this one. But nobody ever really takes the time to assess the total pain, level of effort, that all these requirements require. Schedule a review periodically, annually for most of us, to zero out your reporting. And one more thing that I'll say to the community, because you guys know me by now. If you're not willing to do this, stop complaining about the time you and your people spend on admin, because now you have a way to address at least part of it. If you leave things the way they are, you're complicit. And complicity forbids whining.
Awesome. All right, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Good way to start the year. Happy 2021, everybody. And here's to a better year. Not that it would be that hard.
There you go. All right, my friend. Take care.
Thanks, partner.
Thanks, everyone. So long.